Hi guys, welcome to the video. Today we're going to talk about making watercolor backgrounds and painting feathers. First of all, hi, I hope you're doing really well. I have been pretty sick for the last couple of weeks, pretty out of it, but I'm glad to be back, and I wanted to share with you a little bit of a process. So at the end of the last video, I shared these papers and I was printing those basically on, when I finished making the watercolor, I would print them on what was left on the tile. And for example, the little piece on the left had a spot that kept reminding me of a feather, so I painted that, and we will paint one of those at the end. But I thought, today let's just do a little bit of a process kind of dive into making some of these sheets. They're quite beautiful. It's an interesting way to think about your colors, to mix things, to get loose, to just feel kind of, if you're feeling creatively stuck, it's a nice way to kind of pare that back a little bit and just think about color, and then we can actually paint on these sheets as well. So, okay, so I'm going to show you kind of through what papers and things I used, but I'm pretty sure, a variety of papers that you have, watercolor papers, other papers, I'm sure will be fine. So I'm using this little Amalfi cotton sketchbook. I think this is my third or fourth one, and I just cut the tie there, and that just pops out, and then I like to put ribbon through those just to make it a little bit pretty and kind of nice to handle. So I have this little bit of silk ribbon, and I will link these shops below, and I usually just fold the ribbon a little bit and kind of use something to poke it through the hole there. You can also just poke it through a couple of sheets at a time. So what I do is I turn it around, I flip it the other way so the ribbons are kind of hanging out the edge of the book, and then when I open it I can just flip this page over, and the back of it's quite a thick, sturdy, sort of just becomes something to hold the sketchbook. But anyway, I like these sheets for this because they're quite thin, so it's not a very thick paper. So I kept a few out when I bound that back up with the ribbons, and I just got a selection of watercolors that I think are similar to ones that I would have on the marbling plates left. I'm also doing this just here at the desk on a ceramic tray. This is actually a sandwich tray from a Paris ceramic company, but you can use a plate. Also, the tiles that I usually use up in the studio are just from Home Depot. They're under $5. It's just like I think I get like 18 by 24, but you can just get like a 12 by 12 one as well, just like a ceramic tile. Anyway, so I'm just putting a bunch of these watercolors straight from the tubes onto this wet surface. What I'm kind of trying to do is replicate the tiles when I'm cleaning them off. So they're quite wet, and there's all these kind of blues and purples and turquoises just going everywhere. So I put them on there, and the tile's wet, and then I'm using my brush and kind of blending those together, maybe not blending them too much, getting a bit more water on my brush, really also trying to kind of make some defined areas. There's usually sort of defined areas where different colors are kind of sitting, and then there'll be areas where they're kind of blending. So I'm sort of taking all that into account and sort of trying to create that look on this marbled plate, or on this plate. So I grab a piece of paper, and then you don't have to put it sort of in the middle. You can put it anywhere kind of around where you're wanting the color, and then the parts of the page that didn't get filled you can kind of re-put on there. Sometimes I'll just sort of put a corner on and press that down. Sometimes I will drag it along a little bit. So there's kind of different ways that you can go about it. Then you can also just re-wet everything. it's definitely just a nice way to kind of play with colour. You can try adding more colours. You know, you could just do greens, just do blues. I'm just kind of trying to replicate sort of these very kind of pastel and different coloured papers that I showed you last week. And you can keep putting the paper down, so just because you've put it down once, you can, you know, keep kind of adding colour to that. You don't have to just put it down the once and just keep that print, just kind of keep adding different colours. So here I'm adding a bit of a neutral. This would have also been nice as like a burnt sienna type, but I didn't have that, so I thought just a tube handy, so I thought we'll put some of the interference lilac on this dark colour and see how that goes. So once you're happy with the paper, the other thing you can do is just squeeze some paint straight onto the paper to create like these little bit of more sort of raised impasto areas. And these are really good for putting some glitters, or like in this case I'm going to do a little bit of this Schmincke Aqua Bronze. This will kind of stay anywhere on the wet page. And then I'm just using a little bit of this glitter from Target, and this is, we got this quite a few years ago, so I'm not sure if it's still available, but yeah, it's just a nice way to kind of bring a little bit more interest into like these kind of more sort of generally flat watercolor pieces. And so then we have our first paper. So we can use that to paint on with acrylic paints. You could use gouache over the top, or you could just use more watercolor. I also think these would be really nice with like inks, like a dip pen and inks over the top of them as well. It's actually a lot easier to do when you're doing it just with two hands. Like I'm trying to hold the camera here, so it's a little bit trickier. But yeah, you know, it's a pretty easy kind of an intuitive process. It might look a little bit more fiddly than it is. So you can also do this in your sketchbooks. I'm going to use one of these sketchbooks I showed you in the last video, and I got a question about these. These are a heavier weight, so it's a similar kind of Amalfi cotton paper, but they are definitely a heavier weight paper. Yep, and so once I've done a print on just some of that paper, I'm going to just grab some of that watercolor and kind of just add it to that and kind of take that across the page there, soften it into the next page. The other thing I've been thinking about is taking some large sheets of watercolor paper and just doing this on a portion of the paper and then sort of blending a painting into that. So I did the just preliminary kind of edge of this here, and we will look at maybe painting this in a future video. Okay, so you can see that I used several sketchbooks there, and just kind of laying down a little bit of remnants of what was left on the plate. This is also a really nice way to use up like maybe old tubes that that are maybe nearly finished, or ones that you aren't using anymore, maybe like kind of initial student grade ones that you bought or things like that. So let's just swatch the colours quickly. The first one was Opera Rose by Daniel Smith. I think every brand does like an Opera Rose, the bright fluorescent pink. The next one was Apricot by American Journey. I think that is Cheap Joe's own brand. They may be called something different now. The next one was Daniel Smith Duochrome Lapis Sunlight, and then this one is Daniel Smith Duochrome Aquamarine. So I will list all these below as well. This one here is the Winsor & Newton Cobalt Violet. And again, you can use a variety of colours, like any colours that you have. What I am trying to do here is just show you kind of to get creative and to kind of use a breadth and kind of an interesting mix of colours. It doesn't matter if it doesn't always work out. That's part of kind of looking at, you know, what's available, what will work and what won't work. And it's sometimes those kind of in between moments where you kind of figure out things. So the last two were Interference Lilac by Daniel Smith and the Daniel Smith Van Dyke Brown. So I think one of the things I've been interested in kind of this year and lately is I always struggled to mix pink and blue, and kind of how do you kind of mix these aquas and turquoises with pinks, bright pinks, soft pinks, and there's always these little bits of sparkle as well. So kind of just thinking through all of those things. I always love using neutrals to kind of mute brighter colours down to create some really sumptuous kind of mid-range kind of smoky colours. And I love just using pages like this. You can see I've kind of put a little bit of a palette on just on my page, sketchbook page there, and kind of just using a page in the sketchbook to mix things, to add things to each other, see how that flows, see how it works. When they dry, you know, how granulating are they? How well does the kind of interference colours go with them? And sometimes from a page like this, I might only find one or two mixes that I really like, which is just fine, you know. That's the whole process of it. Yeah, so actually, as I was editing this footage, the one thing that I wish I had have done more of on this page to kind of show you was mixing some more water with these colours to really soften them down and water them down, and you get some very, very soft, beautiful neutrals as well. Like these are all still quite bright mixes. But yeah, this is such a enjoyable and I think a really sort of good way to like just give yourself even a week, like say you have 10 minutes every day, and just do some mixes that week. If you don't feel like painting anything else, if you're not sure, you know, you're stuck and you're not sure what to paint, or you just don't have time maybe to kind of think about larger paintings and things, just spend some time each day doing these, and I really think you'll be really proud of how far you've come after just doing these small colour mixing exercises. So yeah, that is our pages. It's quite nice, like just being able to add those little extra bits to the paper. You know, sometimes when we don't have kind of oil paints, like we're more working with watercolors on the channel, sometimes I do kind of wish and like I miss that kind of the impasto, kind of the thicker paint. So doing something like this is quite nice. And then I think the next morning I just did this little feather because we keep finding and seeing feathers outside. I haven't been filming much because like I said, I just haven't been that well, so kind of getting the walk done that's about it. But yeah, I wanted to kind of just show these feathers as well are a really fun, an easy project to do and a really fun project to do. So I'm getting this is a cotton sketchbook from the Handbook Co. And yeah, we're just going to start with kind of the middle part, that kind of hard part in the middle of the feather. And you can see that I'm not going to make a solid line here. I am just sort of creating a little bit of this curve, creating a little bit of that kind of spine of the feather. And then I'm just going to get some colours, since we've kind of already done that bit of mixing and I'm familiar with kind of the colours and what I'm thinking might work well together. I just start grabbing some of those colours and putting these kind of the feathery parts around that initial line that we created. And so yeah, I think it's quite nice to kind of just add different colours. You can see that like I might go on the one side, or I might work them similarly down. It really depends. And I'm leaving a tiny little gap in between the line that we initially created and just where I'm painting. And you can see that I'm also leaving a few little gaps. I'm pushing some of the feathers out and some of it more inwards to create that kind of movement. You know, it's really nice when you see the feather and there's like little gaps in it, or maybe some of it's going a different way. Then we can just go back in and get some stronger colour and just add little bits of those from the middle, from the centre, going out. Again, just doing small exercises like this can teach you a lot about dropping in colour, which colours are going to work together, which colours might flow too much maybe and overtake the whole side of the feather. But you could also do this with acrylics, you could do this with inks. And so I just go down each side, kind of just adding different little bits of colour interest. And then I am taking a paper towel, I'm drying off, like wetting and drying off the brush, and I'm just trying to lift little bits here as well to sort of create a little bit of dimension. And again, like this is something where you could fill pages with these. So the last thing that I do is kind of go in and take some colour and just add in those little kind of singular hairs that are at the bottom of the feather. And that's pretty much all I did. I left it really soft. Again, you could leave this to dry and then go in and glaze some more colours over the top. The other thing I did on this sketchbook page is I just put in a couple of flowers, and this one I did with just, well, I'll show you the colours that I used. But yeah, it's quite nice to just add this kind of maybe line work. And I used a silver, and well, I'll show you here. So this is the it's like a silver gold, but it's I can't remember her name. Lissy Linker. I'll link it below. And this is my blue, but I'll show you a few different options here. So I like to mix these together so it gives the holographic a little bit of a stronger value. And it's just something quite nice to use in line work over the top of one of these more colourful pages. The other thing you can use is the Holbein gouache. This is the Brilliant Silver, so it's got a really nice sparkle to it as well. And then this is the Daniel Smith Indigo. You can also use Huckleberry. The cat wants to say hello. This is, I think, and you can see here I used far too much of the indigo, but I actually really love these combos. I would love to do like some paintings with this kind of indigo and kind of silvery colouring. But bezel would work from KJ Designs by Karen. Any sort of those beautiful holographic or sparkly things. You could also use like a pearl white. yeah, and so I'm just kind of finishing off a little bit of the flower here. But the other thing that would be really nice is this is the Sennelier Silver Ink. This has also like this kind of antiqued silvery gold. It's really pretty. But yeah, the last of the orders went out this week. I'm so thankful for your patience, and I hope you guys have enjoyed everything. I love seeing your on Etsy the reviews and the paintings that you've done. They're so beautiful. I also wanted to say thank you for liking, sharing the channel, for subscribing, and for hyping. I didn't even know it was a thing. My sister found it, and so many of you are hyping the videos. That is so nice. I feel like I'm kind of always losing views, like 50, 100 or more, but sometimes it's like 30 or 12 or 5, and the other day it was like 1, and I'm like, it can't be right. And then a few days later it was 1 again. I'm like, how can one person unview a video? Anyway, so it's really kind of you to be hyping and everything like that. I really appreciate it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.